You asked for this one. The Keter video hit 20k views, and I said if it did, we'd do a Thaumiel, so here we are. Thaumiel is the classification the Foundation barely talks about. Officially, it doesn't exist outside eternal use. Unofficially, it's the answer to a very specific problem. Sometimes the only thing that can stop a disaster is another disaster, and you just have to make sure it's pointed in the right direction. Hell, like almost the entire Godzilla franchise is basically this. And before anyone starts sending me a list, yes, I know there's an argument for other tool-type abnormalities being Thaumiel, just because they're useful. Der Freischutz being a good weapon doesn't make him Thaumiel. A hammer is useful, it doesn't make it into like a rescue worker. We are only covering abnormalities that actively help contain, hunt down, or neutralize other abnormalities and entities. Usefulness is not what we're covering. The abnormality's ability to be used to protect and take out other abnos is. This, however, is a short list, which means we get to actually go deeper into these stories instead of rushing through them like we did in the other 3 videos. Keter is, we cannot promise this stays in the box. Thaumiel is, we point this at the thing that's already out of the box. The SCP Foundation defines Thaumiel as anomalies used to further foundational goals, usually meaning they get weaponized against other anomalies, or the world just doesn't function without them quietly doing their job. It's the most controversial classification in the setting for a reason. It means the Foundation stopped asking how do we contain this and started asking what does this do for us. Lobotomy Corporation doesn't have a direct equivalent. Yes, abnos breach to fight other abnos, but they don't classify that especially. The closest LobCorp gets is treating an abnormality's byproducts as useful. Ego, gifts, energy. But actively deploying an abnormality as a weapon against another abnormality, it only happens with like Little Red, and you have to pay her for that privilege. That's an entirely different relationship. That's the Foundation looking at a monster and going, good boy, go get him. One Sin's entire existence changes the moment White Knight escapes. Before this moment, he's the chill guy in a containment zone, not bothering anyone. Most of us use him to level up several skills on our nuggets, because what's he gonna do? Float there? Aggressively? If White Knight breaches, One Sin goes looking for him. There are several SCPs that have the hubris and god complex of White Knight. What's to stop him from hunting them down? The SCP Foundation has exactly this kind of asset, and the clearest parallel would be SCP-076-2, aka Abel. Abel is one of the most dangerous entities the Foundation has on file, and one of the few times they've pointed at him something worse on purpose was most famously against SCP-682, the hard-to-kill reptile. The logic is identical. You don't just unleash your most dangerous assets for fun. You unleash them because the alternative is worse. Picture the memo. White Knight has 12 apostles and a countdown nobody stopped in time. The department is gone, and somewhere in that wreckage, One Sin is already moving, because that's the one thing he knows how to do. He is the ultimate protection against city-ending destruction, and that's Thaumiel. We already established in the Keter video that Little Red escapes to hunt things. The twist for this list is that sometimes what she's hunting is exactly what the Foundation would want dead. Specifically, the wolf. If Big and Will Be Bad Wolf breaches Little Red doesn't wait for permission, she just goes out of control and goes straight after him, ignoring her own rules. And on top of that automatic response, the facility can pay her energy to request her against a very specific breaching threat or an active ordeal. I know SCP don't have the ordeals, but you know, whatever. They can literally pay her whenever they need. An on-call assassin that can take some of your strongest threats. The SCP comparison that fits here is less about a single entity and more about an attack dog style Thaumiel. Something dangerous enough that containing it feels irresponsible until you remember that it's the only thing fast enough to catch what just got loose. The Foundation has used exactly this logic with hostile but controllable anomalies when the alternative was letting something worse run free. The uncomfortable part is that Little Red being Keter and Little Red being Thaumiel aren't contradictory. She's both. She's dangerous enough to warrant her own containment file, and useful enough that the Foundation would absolutely put her leash into someone's hand during an emergency. No, not like that. She's the fire you fight fire with. Moving on, we've got the Clouded Monk, and his role here is quieter than the others, and it kind of makes him a bit interesting. Yin and Yang is his whole thing when it comes to being useful. You know, you get Yin, you're forced to get Yang. If you keep Yang equipped too long, they try to fuse together. You know, Yin can also breach under its own, which will make Yang breach. You know the rules, you know how this works. Clouded Monk helps with exactly that problem. Having a stabilizing presence involved in that management loop is the difference between a controlled suppression and watching your department turn into a bad dragon party. Just imagine that Clouded Monk would be willing to help in other situations. What if, I don't know, SCP-148 were to break and make its way towards SCP-1482? And there, keeping them from connecting, is the Clouded Monk kung-fuing one into submission. It would be like the millionth movie where the plot is keeping the bomb from going off, but this time you just have to stop two wires from getting close to each other. Clouded Monk is here to do just that. The most asked for one has made it onto 2 lists now, and we covered Queen of Hatred in the Keter video because her breach conditions are genuinely unstable, panic, employee deaths, or an emotional trigger that no one can fully predict. Here's the other half of her file. Once she's active, she doesn't just attack the facility, she engages other breaching abnormalities and ordeals directly. If something else is loose and causing damage, she becomes a combatant against it. Not only just another problem stacked up on top of the first one. That's the same dangerous enough to be terrifying, controlled enough to be useful profile the Foundation loves for Thaumiel classification. Think of her as an emergency response the facility didn't build on purpose. She wasn't designed to be a defense mechanism, but when everything goes wrong at once, that's exactly the role she ends up filling. She's proof that Keter and Thaumiel aren't opposites. Sometimes they're the same file, just read from 2 different angles depending what's currently on fire. Now for the one you guys crucified me for, Der Freischutz. Whole gimmick is simple. Give him a target, he shoots it. That's the job. And for SCP, a soldier that don't miss a shot that can hit anything is a dream come true, even with its slight setback of the 7th round. The Foundation's version of this isn't hard to imagine, an anomalous marksman asset held in reserve specifically so that when something needs to die from a distance, when you have to literally reach out and touch somebody with your death bullet without risking a full team, there's a trigger somebody can pull. And this is the most practical tool entry on the list. Yes, I know he's not a tool, but he uses his gun like one, so his tool. And it's exactly why we opened with the disclaimer. Being useful isn't his bar. Being pointed at the threat to protect something else is what he sets for the bar. Der Freischutz clears it because his entire function is offense against something else. He's not incidentally useful like a chair is useful. He is the response. You point him at the breach and the breach has a very bad day. The story here isn't complicated and it doesn't need to be. Sometimes Thaumiel isn't a clever twist. Sometimes it's just a gun that never runs out of reasons to fire. The most complicated entry on this list deserves some space. The backwards clock at full charge can be activated by a level 5 employee to trigger a full facility reset. Every escaped abnormality or ordeal gets recontained, or every Qlif meltdown clears, including ones caused by an arbiter. Every Qlif overlord on a VOV or ALIF abnormality gets removed, though it won't undo the The penalty on departments that lost every employee because it can't bring the dead back. Any energy spent that day, whether from the Freischutz or silent orchestra, gets restored. The cost is the employee. They die, the abnormality vanishes from its containment unit for the rest of the day. That is an enormous ask, and it's the clearest Thaumiel logic on this entire list. One confirmed loss in exchange for undoing every other loss that happened that day. It's the trolley problem, and no one has a problem sacrificing the one for the many here. If the employee is below level 5, it goes very differently. Every other employee in the facility gets a normal chance to die or panic. The clock resets its light to 0 and can be charged again, but trying to activate it a second time with the same low-level employees makes death or panic for them almost guaranteed, and at that point recovering the situation basically requires like an ass load of luck. There's also a hard exclusion list. Backward Clock's instant suppression does not work on White Knight, Apocalypse Bird, the Red Mist, and Arbiter, Midnight Ordeals, the Red Shoes, Dream of the Black Swan, or Army of Black, which, considering half of these were on the getter list for exactly this kind of unreliability, tells you the clock has limits even on its reset button. The SCP equivalent that fits this shape best is the reality resetting large-scale correction anomaly, something the Foundation keeps sealed away specifically because using it means accepting a real cost or an enormous cleanup. This one is an emergency brake nobody wants to pull, sitting in a room waiting for someone with the clearance and the nerve to pull it anyway. Backwards Clock isn't Thaumiel because it's strong, it's Thaumiel because when the day is already lost, it's the only thing that can undo that day. If you think there's another Thaumiel candidate we skipped, same rules as always. Bring me specifics and let me know. I can add them to another video if this one does well. Tell me what it actually does to help contain or neutralize something else, not what it's capable of in a vacuum. No, it's strong, so it counts arguments. Thaumiel isn't about power, it's about which direction that power is pointed. Keter asks whether the box holds. Thaumiel asks something almost insulting by comparison. What if we just aimed the monster in that box ourselves? One sin exists to hunt down the worst thing on the Keter list. Little Red gets deployed against threats she wasn't even built to fight, including her own personal nemesis. Clouded Monk keeps 2 catastrophes from ever touching, and Queen of Hatred turns her own instability into a weapon against everything else that's unstable. Der Freischutz is exactly what it says on its label, and the Backwards Clock is a last resort that nobody wants to use sitting there anyway, because someday the day will be bad enough that someone has to use the damn thing. The Foundation doesn't like admitting Thaumiel exists because it means they've stopped pretending every abnormality gets treated the same. Some get boxes, some get weaponized. Lobotomy Corporation never drew that line on purpose. But looking at this facility's actual behavior, they drew it anyway. They just call it, energy quotas. And that's the Thaumiel list. Short, but it earned every minute. That closes out our full Project Moon to SCP classification series. Safe, Euclid, Keter, and now Thaumiel. If you want more of these crossover breakdowns, tell me, and if you think I missed a Thaumiel candidate, you know the rule. Give me a breakdown so I know what to run with, not just a couple words and praying I'm smart enough to figure it out. With my current work schedule, I am a drooling idiot most of these days. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you're feeling like you need a new place to be you, try joining our Discord. And like always guys, be good to each other. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.